Hello, everybody. Welcome from all around the world. Great to see you letting us know in the chat where you're dialing in from and why you're dialing in to watch this webinar today. I'm Peter Hurst. I'm the Senior Associate Dean for Executive Education at the MIT Sloan School of Management, and I am delighted to be joined today in our latest Innovation at Work webinar series with John Davis, a senior lecturer in family enterprise and faculty director of the Future Family Enterprise program at the MIT Sloan School of Management. This is a deep dive, a 60-minute session. It's also a highly interactive session. We hope that you've got lots of questions and we'll think of more as the next hour goes by very quickly. But first of all, let me just welcome John officially to the virtual stage here with me. John is a senior lecturer in family enterprise at the MIT Sloan School of Management. He's really globally recognized as a pioneer in this field of studying family enterprises, and he has written very highly acclaimed books and academic papers and taught many courses and advises a number of family enterprises around the world. So we're just delighted that he is with us here at the Sloan School, and more particularly that he's with us here today on this webinar. We're going to, with John, discuss his latest work and research on new practices and mindsets and strategies that will help family enterprises survive and thrive in this new economy. He will take us through some of the issues, most of them complex, that family enterprises are facing, and he'll talk a little bit about the course that I just mentioned, the Future Family Enterprise course, which runs this April. As I mentioned, this is intended to be very much an interactive session. We have not prepared a long presentation for you today. We're really eager to hear your questions about the field of family enterprise, the issues that you're facing, or even if you have specific questions about the upcoming course with John. And so to get that started, I'm going to ask John a few questions, but that's really just to give you all time to formulate your questions. And please do put them in the Q&A rather than in the chat, but also feel free to use the chat for adding any sort of comments that aren't questions that you'd like to share with us and with the other participants. So, John, I thought I would start by looking at some of your written works, and you have an article, The Owner's Mindset in the Age of Disruption. And one quote that we pulled out from that, I think we're showing it on the screen at the moment, but let me just read it for those that may not be able to see it. Success today requires thinking like an owner. This means gaining altitude, detaching from any single business or asset, focusing on value creation, and embracing change. Family owners must be steady center of gravity and the engine of change in turbulent times. Agility starts with the owners. So just let that sink in for a second, but perhaps you could explain this quote to us, because it seems quite profound. What is the increased importance of owners during these kind of turbulent times? And what is an owner's mindset, and how do people go about developing one?
Yeah, thank you. Good opener, Peter. Great to be with you as always. And hello to everybody from around the world. I'm eager to get to your particular questions, but the ones that Peter has chosen for me just to warm us up, we'll give you a good idea, not only of the way I think about certain things, but also themes that we approach in an ongoing basis in this Future Family Enterprise program that I lead at MIT. It's a wonderful opportunity for families to send teams to get together and think for a week about what's coming at you, how you get into the future successfully, how you bring your family, build consensus and bring your family along with you on that journey. And this topic really comes out a ton because it needs to. What I would say here is that owners of companies, owners of family businesses have always been central to the success and the long-term success of those companies. because they not only provide stability, so management can do its job and think long term and make important choices, but the owners occasionally have to make big directional shifts or changes or decisions. In the past, those kinds of decisions didn't come up very often. Currently, in today's era, they do. And increasingly, owners need to be prepared in order to be able to give direction, not just provide stability. That's the quick one. And let me dive a little deeper into that. Part of what I've been doing over the past decade, especially at MIT, is to think about where the world is going and what is driving change and occasional disruption in the world. And disruption, we know, is increasing in frequency, increasing in impact, but change is not only constant, it's accelerating. And in all of these respects, and what we know is that the interaction of these various changes, of these various factors, are impacting society in significant, pretty seismic ways, impacting our businesses, our family offices, whatever a family owns and tries to build value with, it's impacting it. And then finally, our families themselves. And I'll say something about all of these different ways in which we're seeing the expression of change. But we know that the era that we're in is different. And I think it's fundamentally important, Peter, that we all, no matter what our role, no matter where we are in life, that we understand that life today is different. We are in a different era. We have moved. It's not just an extension of the old. We're in something discreetly new. And what we know about it is that the world that we're in is far more interconnected, digitally for sure, but also in terms of its globalized nature. We know that because of the digital world that we're in, but other factors as well, like social media, there's much more transparency in almost everything we do. Companies are seeing this, individuals and families are seeing this. And importantly, we have many more choices today than we did 10 years ago or certainly 20 years ago. You can shop anywhere. You've got choices about where you work. You've got choices about where you live that we didn't recognize or really have earlier. The pace of everything is increasing. The pace of work, the pace of life, the pace of decision making. And important for us today and in our thinking about our businesses and even our lives is that the window of opportunity to make important choices has been shrinking. You simply don't have the time today to dawdle, to stretch out decisions. And this is one of the vulnerabilities of families that like to make choices over time, that like to take more time to make key choices. That's going away. All of our associations now are more diverse, including in our families. And in combination, we're experiencing not just more change, but occasional seismic change, where a few of these factors or all of these factors combined come together and produce radically different new experiences that we're going to have. And then finally, importantly, the world is less predictable. Now take all of these into account and think about the world that owners of family companies face. Less predictability, faster movement, occasional and more frequent big changes coming, opportunities opening up because of the way the world is moving, but also challenges becoming more severe. and the risk of making bad choices becoming higher. So in that world, how do we need to think about our businesses, our family offices, our investments, even our philanthropy? Well, we've got to be good. We've always had to be good at operations. I think it's even arguable today that you even have to be better at operations today than you were 5 or 10 or 15 years ago, because more people are watching and people have more choices. And if they don't like the way you do things, if you don't deliver value, if you don't deliver it now and at a good price, you're at risk. So operations have always been important. Ownership and making important new choices in new leaders, important new investments, important new markets, adopting new technology. Those things happened in the past too, but they just didn't happen very much. And you had more time to contemplate what was happening around you and adjust to it. Today, owners who tend to lean towards, family business owners tend to lean towards operations. They love operations. They love to tinker. They love to innovate. Family companies are more innovative than non-family companies, for example. They're more customer focused. They build better workplaces. This is what families tend to love. But they also have to be good, really good today at these ownership level decisions, such as these. Where are we going? And in a world that is less predictable and also higher risk, you've got to be on that game. You've got to know the world. You've got to really be agile in thinking about what's next for us. Where do we place our capital? Who do we choose for key roles? What kind of culture are we going to build in our company and in our broader enterprise? That it has to be innovative. It has to build unity of thought and action. It has to be much more agile than we were in the past. Do owners build cultures in companies? Not directly. You ask your managers to do that, but you're accountable to make sure that the right culture exists. And then you also have to think about governance. What decisions are the owners going to make? What are we going to delegate to our board or into management? What kinds of outside advice are we going to need in this process? Who makes what decisions? How do we make decisions? These are all areas that owners are accountable for. And what I would argue today, the reason for the Future Family Enterprise course, the guiding light in a lot of the work that I'm doing, Peter, is that owners are much more critical today. Well-informed, understanding, active owners are much more critical today for the success of family enterprise.
Great, thank you, John. And it's on the note that you finished there, operation to ownership. That maybe brings up the next quote from a 2022 white paper on the future of the family enterprise. The question of succession. So a family are owners. What does that mean for the question of succession? And on your quote is that families must engage and excite the rising generations who have different expectations and more options in their lives than in the past, or risk losing them. Proactive and flexible approaches are needed, including earlier invitations to sit at the table for important discussions about the future, as well as more opportunities for talent development and partnering across generations. So this suggests that things have changed or are changing. The things that used to work for how families would engage future generations seem not to be working as well anymore. If that's true, why is that the case? And what should families be doing now to retain future generations, and in particular the next generation's interest and talent in being these owners that you're describing?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a succession, and preparing the next generation has always been key in sustaining the success of a family company and the family itself. Always been key. But I think there's been an attitude up until you started to see this change in Generation X. It definitely accelerated in Y, and we're watching it now evolve in Z. But the world for the next generation has shifted dramatically. The way they view the family company, the way they view their options, the way they set their sights on their own career development. I've been teaching now in this field for over 40 years, and I've taught a lot of MBAs, executives, and understood the kind of shifting mindset of next gens. Now, we understand that the next generation never is monolithic. My generation wasn't monolithic. The next generations aren't monolithic. There's diversity. And there are some younger family members who love to come into the traditional family company, start at the bottom, work their way up, become great operators, et cetera. There are some of those, but fewer. And there are more family members today that are thinking about their careers and thinking about family companies, their family's company, in different ways. And so when you think about what drives success, long-term success, well, having the right, being in the right business, having the right enterprise, having the right portfolio of activities, what we call your family enterprise, key. You got to figure that out. And occasionally you have to change that. You have to have great management, really sound organizations, perhaps today more than ever before. You also need a great team of owners that not only provide some stability for long-term thinking and innovation, but also can, again, really help us redirect what we're doing, place our capital, place our people, develop the culture, develop a strategic vision, and do that on an ongoing, agile basis. But finally, none of this works unless you get the family behind it. Now, not all family members will be real enthusiasts for what we're doing in our business or what we're doing in other ways as a family. There are some more active, some less active, some that are champions, some that are passionate, and others that are less. We get that. But as a whole, you want your family to really be interested in what the family is doing. And within that family, you've got to get that next generation hooked on what the family does or what it's interested in doing or where it could go earlier. Because if you don't, they'll wander off because they've got all kinds of opportunities. They're going to go to school someplace else. Good chance they're going to live outside the hometown of the family and family company, and maybe and often today in another country. So if you don't strive to get to build their interest, their intrigue, their commitment even to what the family is doing, they may wander off and you may never be able to get them back. That's more of a threat today than it ever has been. And to get their interest, you've got to get them thinking with you about what we're trying to build and where this whole thing is going. And we all admit we have less predictability today about where it's going than before, but we do know that in the future, if your generation is not interested and what we have built or could build, we're in trouble. This is not going to work very well, or it may fall apart. So we've got to get the next generation into thinking with us about where this thing is going and how can you be part of this. You may not have an active career in our business, may or may not, but we need you to be a good owner. You could participate in our owners council eventually, or on our family council, or you might be really driven by social impact and want to help the family with its philanthropic activities. So we need to figure out how to get you interested and how to build a group of interested family members in that next generation. And we need to recognize that the motives, the interests of this next generation have shifted. They want some things that my generation and even Generation X didn't emphasize as much. And we've got to spend time learning about them and trying more to adapt, to bring them in and adapt what we're doing to capture their interest and talent. Part of that just involves a new attitude on the part of the senior generation that we need to partner with this next generation more completely and more consistently. It's not just, we're going to build this, and when it's your turn, you'll get a chance to build it or make decisions. That's not partnering. That's more discrete handoffs of authority. And those days are largely past, I tell parents today. So partnering is a key word in many elements of family enterprise. It certainly is a key word here in dealing with the next generation. Let me stop there.
Great, thank you. And that's a really great explanation of some things that you studied that work well, but you also study when things are not working well and go wrong. And one example of that is where you see conflicts arising. And here's a quote from an article, yours, The Origin of the Persistent Family Conflict. And you say, the simple fact is that if you trace most serious family conflicts back to their origins, the tensions are rooted in a single triggering source, and that is disrespect. This seems like a very powerful insight. People probably think that conflict in family situations, particularly in family enterprise, really comes from people having differing points of views or different goals, things they want to achieve. But you're suggesting that there's actually something that goes much deeper than that. Can you share some examples of that, in particular, how families have managed to avoid that driver of conflict?
Yeah. This emerged, this understanding of families and the importance of respect in family relationships emerged for me. It took years for me to see this, because it is true that, we can disagree and we can have a conflict over, you want to go there and I want to go here. Sure. We can disagree over, I think I should be paid this and you think I should be paid that. Of course. Yeah, that'll create some tension. Families get through those kinds of discussions when and people, individuals, this is not just true of families, but it's very true of family relationships. And we often ignore because we think it's love, whatever, let the poets figure out what that means. But we think it's love. We think it's caring. Caring is important, but respect is at the center of healthy family relationships. And we can disagree on all kinds of things. We can even have some heated discussions. We need to have some heated discussions from time to time, as long as our discussions and our relationship are based in respect. So we say disrespect is the enemy. We also say structure is your friend, but we know that disrespect is the enemy. And once family members feel fundamentally disrespected, they tend to wander off, break off, or make trouble. And this was the importance of guarding respect was, intimated to me years and years ago with one of my colleagues from Switzerland, who pointed out that, relationships can go from bad to terrible on two paths. You can continuously disagree about things, but if you disagree enough without trying to find some accommodation, your relationship will sour. As relationships sour, you find more and more things to disagree about. So you need to be thinking about how to build in better listening, better problem solving, better understanding based on respect, because you're important to me, your interests are important to me. We're different. You're going to have different opinions. I'm going to listen to those. But we need to build in ways of moving through these conversations, or we'll move on this path. And we need to guard against some practices like favoritism and excluding people from important conversations that should be there. They know when they're not being part of a conversation that we're having, but it's important to them too. And then secrecy. We use it way, way too much in families. And we need to guard against those actions, but also really try to build the kind of culture that we talk about in the program, that I talk about a lot with families. A good portion of my training and development is as a psychologist, although I've been in the business world and teaching business for a long time too. But nothing helps guard against disrespect and build respect better than a family culture that emphasizes it, and that emphasizes these aspects of it, but doesn't forget the very first word on this slide, which is respectful behavior.
Great. That's helpful. And I think that's a very interesting perspective. But something you said at the beginning of that still seems to be very true, right? Which is that dispersion and diversity of ideas and lifestyles and so forth is still a factor. So you also wrote about this in your white paper last year, and here's a quote from that. Keeping families united today is especially challenging when they're increasingly diverse in terms of values, lifestyles, and geographic dispersion. And family leaders need to embrace this diversity, both to preserve family unity and to tap into that distributed talent pool. So, if unity is so pivotal, you've talked a bit about sort of the foundation of respect, but there still is this movement in many different directions. That must make it difficult to plot that agreed path forward. And so as families grow and become more separated geographically and different lifestyles and so forth, what's your experience of ways that have worked to actually maintain still that kind of unity of purpose and goals for the enterprise?
Yeah. I'll be fast on this because I do want to get to their questions as well. So we understand that the family is changing in these various ways, and certainly becoming more diverse, more complex in terms of where we live. There are now like 3, sometimes 4 generations that can be active in business or active in family life in the family, not just 2, 3, 4, greater diversification of the family in terms of interests and professions and lifestyles and all the rest, and much more individualistic families have become. What's important to me? How do I get to my goals as opposed to the family's goals? So in the face of this kind of new modern family that we're encountering just about everywhere in the world, how do you build the sense that we're in this together, and doing something together is really vital. Part of it is, again, understanding that not only is unity, alignment important in your business, not only is it really important among the owners. And by unity, I don't mean that we're going to agree on everything. I just mean that where we're going and our approaches to doing things, that's the way we do it. And we're together on that. You and I may disagree on this strategy or that tactic or hiring that person, et cetera, but we don't disagree on what we're trying to build, and our values about who we are, what our approach to doing things is. And that has to be in your family as well. In the family that is spreading out everywhere and looking very diverse. What I would say is that, we used to count on homogeneity to kind of give us a sense of, yeah, we're all the same. We all want the same things. We were all the same race, or we were all the same gender, or we were all the same class, or we went to the same school, or there was some homogeneity here that gave us that comfort. Well, no, there isn't that homogeneity anymore, not even in our families. And when that happens in any organization, what you have to focus on is our mission and our values. Well, we're a group. We do this together because we want the same thing. We're going to climb that hill together. And this is our approach. This is the way we do it. And you can build that not only in spite of diversity, but you can harness diversity around a common mission and really align values and really build a much more successful group. It helps to be diverse. You see that now. I mean, that research is, I think, very, very well understood. Diversity helps, but it has to be managed. And it means really focusing on alignment around mission and approach, and giving people opportunities to contribute to that mission and express that approach. You don't all have to be CEOs, and you don't all have to be wealth creators, and you don't, et cetera, or even work in our business. For you to be a contributor, for us to respect your contribution, and for you to feel that you're part of this journey. So again, and I'll just stop here, this is what we're trying to do to get a family to really come together around and to learn about all of these different questions. Thank you for those, Peter, that we are focusing on in this program. And it's an exciting, I'm just going to say a few words about this, then we'll come to their questions. It's a program for multi-generational family teams. Typically, you can come within one generation. Often families come senior and junior generations to learn how the world is changing, assess where they are, think about where they want to go, and to start building that roadmap within their group. And we do this in an exciting, it's a wonderful conversation that happens in a variety of ways, but including facilitated private family meetings where you get to talk about what we're talking about in the program and what that means to your family and what you want to do and where you want to go. And we do this over 6 days, really. You come in on Sunday afternoon, we get you oriented, and we put you through a very programmatic way of thinking about getting into the future, so that when you leave on Friday at about noon, and Peter Hurst hands you your certificate of completion on this exciting, pretty tiring program, you leave with an action plan. that you can pursue with your family going forward. So we hope you will look into it, look into the program. There's still time. There's still some family seats available in the program. It occurs at the end of April. Feel free to email me as well with particular questions about it. But Peter, with that behind us, let's take their questions, please.
Yes, thank you, John, and thank you for those of you who already started asking questions. Please do continue in the Q&A. And let me start by taking you back to the beginning, perhaps, of a question that came in early when you were talking about change and the drivers of change, John. And Juan Ribeiro is asking, let me just read this question. How really prone to change themselves, their businesses, and their governance processes do you find that actual owners and family members are?
Families prefer, this is, I think, built in to family relationships, and it helps them maintain stability. That's useful to some extent. But it gets in the way of quick change. Families prefer slower change that does not disrupt our relationships, our status, the respect we feel that we deserve because of our place in the enterprise, because I'm the parent and you're not. Change is resisted a bit in families because we want to make sure that these other factors that we prize don't get too much out of alignment. So families take longer, for example, to make significant changes. I used to say, families, and research shows that family companies in general take a 2-year or 3-year period and compare family and non-family companies, and family companies perform better by significant margins typically. But they tend to still are very vulnerable when they try to last a long time. So I would say, well, look, families and family companies, they're slower, but they're better. They take longer, but they perform better. I'm not saying that anymore, because today, if you're slower at some things, you could be dead. Life could move beyond you. Your industry could eclipse you. A competitor can eat your lunch. You don't have the same kind of latitude that I gave family companies 10, 15 years ago. You don't. I've changed my mind on that. And I think the world is really backing me up on my new opinion. You can't be slower and better. You better learn to change faster. And building in that agility, and even building in the sense that we welcome change. Let's get ready for it by experimenting. We're not satisfied with what we're doing today. We like doing it well. We're good operators, great, but we're not satisfied just doing this. We're looking for new opportunities. We're looking for where the world is going. We're going to try some things in advance so we're ready. And we're going to hire some people or get some advice that can challenge our way of doing things, or maybe give us some better ways of doing things. So it's that kind of new sensibility, Peter, that I think families really need to digest and get excited about. And I think the next generation is there. I think this next generation is there. I think
maybe that leads into
my job.
Thank you, John. Maybe that leads into a question, I think, paraphrasing a little, that Dr. Elvis Zornick asked, talking about sort of the digital economy. And as you were giving that answer, I was thinking about the difference between adapting, evolving versus transforming.
Yeah.
And, you talked about the fact that sort of the digital economy is perhaps a driver of a need for transformation. But could you say, say a little bit more about the difference between evolutionary change and transformational change that you're seeing?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you. I think that's a really important way to talk about this this distinction. Families love gradual evolutionary change. That's the way we've historically liked to do it because it agrees internally in the family to do it that way. Families need to be to think now like owners and to say what we own, some of us may be operators. Some of us love operations, but the family, the best place, the most important, the most prized contribution we can make here are to be excellent owners of what we've built and what we and others have built. That's our big job. And as good owners, we don't have to be as sensitive. We're up here in the ownership group. That can stay pretty stable. Our holding company, where most of us are, can stay pretty stable. Operations, those are going to change. And if we find that one of our businesses or business lines is no longer able to grow value or add to what we want to do, we can diminish it, we can sell it, we can change. So you need to build an organization where the family's attitude about slow doesn't get in the way of our changing either our portfolio or particular businesses. So you need to remove that interference with fast, transformative change, because we don't always have to transform. Sometimes we can still innovate. Sometimes we can grow and innovate and tinker but you've got to be ready. You've got to be ready as an ownership group to transform, to do things. What we're doing and how we're doing it can be very different.
Thank you. Staying on this topic a little longer, a couple of questions that came in while you were talking about this. Walter Mercado and Jonathan Krauss have asked this from two different perspectives. On the one hand, what do you do if the owner and founder is the one that is actually resistant to change, and the rest of the family is trying to drive that? Or conversely, what if the family? Jonathan asks, what if the family itself is more agile and adaptable, but it finds itself in a business environment that's more resistant to change, and so there are key partners that don't want to come on that journey with them. Have you any experience of either of those scenarios?
Yeah, I sure have, and it's I really appreciate the frustration. I actually had a conversation not too long ago with the founder of a substantial company in Mexico, who told me that he didn't have to be that concerned about digitalizing his business, because it was going to take a long time for it to really become a requirement. And I told him, and his daughter was sitting in on this discussion, and she brought me in to talk with him because she knew that this was his attitude. And I said to him, I think this would be a really good time for you to consider selling your business. Because if you persist in this attitude, the value of your company is probably going to fall considerably. He was shocked and a little bit annoyed, but it was the most honest advice I could give him, that if you turn a blind eye to where the world is going, these are the these are the examples of companies, family companies, that just they're doing great until they're not, and then they disappear. Their value collapses. And what do you need to help a founder change? Another founder. I mean, will they listen to experts, quote unquote experts, people with industry? Yeah, sure, they will. Will it really change some of their minds? No, apparently not. And so I try to bring people that they would respect to the table with them to get them to do this. And I'm pretty persistent in it, because I worry that some people become so stubborn in their views and feel disrespected if you don't agree with that view, and resist, and they hold up progress because they've got the ownership. So finding people that can break through, it has been my method for trying to, I'm still in that process with this guy, but finding ways to get people to loosen their death grip on a certain approach or a certain way of doing things that is going to eventually hurt everybody. I don't know if that's comprehensive enough, but I really get it. And knowing, being persistent and finding allies who can back you up is the best way I can recommend getting people to change.
Great, thank you. I'm looking through the questions as you're talking there. There are several that have to do, I would say, with the concept of culture.
Yeah.
So Esther, Paul, Diane, and Roki have all asked different versions of this question. I think broadly speaking, the broad theme is, what are you seeing of the influences of culture, whether that's kind of a national culture or just a culture within a family, as being a determinant of their success or not in some of the practices that you're talking about. And some specific examples, just to focus on that, that came up were, that perhaps in some places there's a culture of progenitor. So like the oldest male heir is perceived to be, or does have the power, or acts as if they have, that they're going to inherit everything. A different example someone was asking about was age. Someone mentioned that they were into their 50s before they were even invited onto the family council, and they're still far too inexperienced to be on the board, which perhaps if you look at public companies isn't quite the pattern these days. And then in all of that context, what are some things that you advise people to do to prepare future generations in the context of what might be these very strong and often essentially unwritten cultural kind of norms?
Yeah. In terms of the issues that families and family companies face, culture doesn't play a big role. It can be a little role. And national laws like taxation and inheritance laws can also influence what we're facing or what we're dealing with. But making some changes, when you want to make changes, when you want to move a system from A to B, that's where you have to really pay close attention to national, ethnic culture, et cetera, because it can affect the way we're wired to see things the way they should be. That's what culture does to us. And so culture, I was just this morning working with a Pakistani family that was, the issues they're facing are virtually the same issues that I'm seeing another like-staged family in Peru dealing with. So the issues, they're much more related to the kind of business or the stage we're in, the ownership stage we're in, than culture. Now, ageism, older people saying, well, you're not quite old enough at 50 to be on the board, is so antiquated and unhelpful. The attitude that because you're a woman, you can't really do X is old, it's antiquated. All of these different beliefs and approaches end up discouraging people that are talented and leaving half of our team on the bench when we need them in the playing field. Now, most of these resistances, whether it's, or attitudes about gender, about age, about whatever, are biases that keep the current group in control and doing things their way and feeling important. That's what these biases end up doing. These cultural attitudes may have started for a different reason, but that's what they end up producing. And the rule for families is today, and this has been true and growing for a long time, is that you can't afford to leave good talent on the bench, number one. And you need to start developing and inviting and in getting that talent to work for you earlier and earlier. The best family companies, you can see this, I've done this comparison, that I've worked with over generations, made early transition not just leadership, but ownership into the next generation earlier than was customary. Inviting people to the table, building their talent, listening to them, getting them to take responsibilities, and then elevating yourself to a different role where you can be supportive of that and make other kinds of decisions. That's always been the winning formula. And families today that don't buy into that don't get that, are really taking a huge risk. Earlier, 100 years ago, 50 years ago, et cetera, they were still taking risk, less. But today it's a severe risk.
Thank you. A few people have been asking about the course that's coming up, but also asking, just building on what you were just talking about the sort of decision making and driving and leading change. And there seems to be an implication that needs to sort of still come in some hierarchical way from the existing power structures within the enterprise. But what if you are a member of that future generation and you're trying to drive that change? And perhaps you could frame it in terms of thinking about the folks that the families that do come to your course. Are people who are from the future generations actually the ones that are trying to use this as a way to play their role in helping to influence the future of the company, or is it still really the senior generations that are driving that?
Well, I think that here, that's a great one. That's a really important question. Most of the instigation of change comes from people that want to see things work differently and don't have the power to enact it. And that's when they come to my course, or that's when they come to me or one of my colleagues and they say, can you help us with this? We're trying to, we need to do this, but we're stuck. We're not getting there, or I'm getting resistance. So it's very typical for people with less power in the system to be the strongest advocates of change. Where parents start advocating for change is when they wake up one day and they say, I can't get my kids interested in this. They're really successful. They got great educations. They've gone off. They're doing other stuff now. And I would say, well, over the last 20 years, what did you do to engage them? Well, nothing. We were in charge. We were doing everything. And I'm saying, okay, well, that was a mistake. Because now they're planted in other things. And now you're going to have to struggle to get them back, even to be good owners. And they say, okay. So the formula here is early engagement and early opportunities to contribute and early discussions about where this whole thing is going. That's the formula. You don't wait until they're 40 or 50. You get them when they're 19 to start talking with you about this, or to think about what this thing means in their lives and how they might be able to contribute. That's when you really start turning on the opportunities and the engagement. Now, if you're in the next generation and that's been closed off to you, you start doing other things. You continue to tell people, the senior generation, I'm interested. I think I can really be helpful. I'd like to talk. Keep sending that message. Eventually, they'll probably come back to you and say, great, thank you. But don't wait for them. Don't wait for them. Start that conversation. Try to get their interest and support, but go off and do things then that you're interested in. Don't hang out in kind of a middle ground that doesn't meet your needs and isn't really, and you're not being used in a productive way inside the enterprise. Find your own opportunities and make them wake up to the fact that you're qualified. That's what I tell my MBA students.
Thank you, John. I see we're almost out of time here, but as always, this was just very eye-opening and practical, and we really appreciate that. Perhaps in the last couple of minutes, there were some other questions that people had about the course. You could just say a bit more about if people want to learn more, whether it's by signing up for this course, how many family members should they try to bring, and what other resources have you got that you could point people at if they're not yet ready or able to come to something like this course?
Well, I think, thank you. Generally we get, let's say, 10 or so families of 5 in a classroom, again, from all over the world. Some are founder, some are sibling stage, some are late cousin stage. Small, medium, and very big businesses attend this, and they're all interested in understanding that they share, even though it's a diverse group in many ways, they share a lot of the same interests and concerns and issues. So it's a team-oriented experience, and it's one that will definitely give you the opportunity and encouragement to talk about the important things that your family and your family enterprise need to address. It's structured that way. You'll get plenty of opportunities to talk with these other families, but you're also going to get a lot of opportunities to talk within your family about the stuff that really matters to you. So look into the program. But if you have other interests, if you have other questions, be in touch with me. And I think that nope, I don't know that my email address is readily available. If you go to MIT, Sloan School, faculty, John Davis, you're going to find me. And I'm here. Send me an email. And if I can connect you, if I can send you a reading, or if I can help you in some way, that's been my personal mission now for decades.
Great. Thank you, John. And I see that Elaine has kindly put your email address in the chat as well, if anyone wants to take a look at that. Well, with that, John, it just remains for me on behalf of everyone who's watching today and people who will watch the recording to thank you for all of your insights and for sharing them with us so generously today. Thank you all for joining us and for your questions. We weren't able to get to all of them, but I tried to include as many points as you were making as I could. We're so pleased that we have this global audience who really engage with us and are curious about and want to learn about these topics. And so we very much look forward to seeing you again in future webinars in the Innovation at Work webinar series. But for now, it remains for me to say thank you again, John Davis, and goodbye from the MIT Sloan School.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone.